Hey everybody, this is Tyson.
And Logan.
And you're listening to Dad, Bods, and Beards podcast. It's a show that gives you a fresh look on being a father, a husband, and honestly, a man being in today's world.
For people who want to have a good time, laugh, and be uplifted, thanks for subscribing and listening. Now for the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Dad, Bods, and Beards, the show where Tyson and I talk about whatever the heck we want, and then our wives probably cringe about it later.
And she usually does.
Yeah. I'm like, why did you say that? Like, hold on, let me text Tommy real quick. We need to remove this. But no, so last
I had to do that on the blocks, by the way.
You had to have them remove stuff.
I'm like, we can't show that.
You're like, you can't show that.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Can you say?
No, off camera.
That would be really funny though. Yeah. Oh, we should do one day when we're super famous and we have no like embarrassment left. We should just run all of the clipped portions. Like, oh, well, now the show's over because we got canceled.
Well, they're not bad. They're just usually oversharing like personal stuff where you just might end up getting divorced. Just joking.
But no, so last episode we talked about fighting for yourself, right? Yep. And I always feel a little bit self-conscious when I'm kind of leading the discussion with like some research because you are so much better at it than me.
Not at all.
Yeah, you are.
No.
Yes, you are.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
You're amazing.
Well, no, because like you show up with like you're like in today's news, like you got like everything, and I'm over here like I used the highlight portion, like I screenshot it, then I highlighted it with my phone. But today this is actually one of the first This is one of the first like audience suggestions that we're actually.
Say this.
What?
Tron, the movie, very underrated.
Where is that coming from?
You said user.
Oh.
User.
Oh.
It just reminded me of
Remember yesterday when you sent me the link of like, I think I might be ADHD.
No, but it's true.
Yeah, duh.
I'm just like, holy crap, that's 100% me. Like everything he just said. I'm like,
yeah, because I just said one word and you're like, oh, by the way, completely unrelated topic.
Tron is a movie.
Welcome to the club, buddy.
Very unrated.
Welcome to the Neuro Spicy Club.
Oh, but yeah, nothing's going to change.
But we are going to talk about one of the first kind of like listener submitted topics that I really enjoyed, and it is by none other than our dear friend Dino, which we had the pleasure of meeting him 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
We went to sushi, ordered way too much sushi.
Oh, so much.
Ton of sushi.
But we also talked pretty much the whole time and didn't eat.
Oh, you speak for yourself. I ate plenty. But Dino suggested that we talk about tough love. Right? You grew up in the 80s and 90s. I grew up in the 90s. I lived in the 80s for 2 weeks. But
wait, you were born in 89?
Yeah. Can't you tell?
Oh,
me and Taylor Swift right there.
Oh, yeah.
Birthday buddies.
All the magic.
Yeah. No, I've said it before. Yeah. I'm a Swiftie, and I'm shamelessly a Swiftie.
Isaac got home, Tuesday?
Mm-hmm.
One of the first songs that everyone had to show him was Fortnite by Taylor Swift.
Oh, yeah. Well, Post Malone, dude.
It was really
Talk about a guy who has flipped his career in a good way. Post Malone too.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was good before. Anyways, unrelated. Today on ADHD and beards.
So speaking of Shania Twain,
dude, I love Shania Twain too.
Dude, she was so hot,
dude.
She still is. But
Shania Twain, Celine Dion, dude. Cher.
I was
listened to Cher
never
all the time
into
too.
Celine Dion.
My mom was into like the big three, like Celine Dion, Shania Twain, and Cher.
Yeah, it was Shalina.
Shalina?
Yeah,
you
Shania Twain. No, Candace is way into Selena. I can never get into it.
Really? Maybe this is the reason why I like the music that I like nowadays, which is like Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter, Chapel Roan. People think you've never listened to any of their songs. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about tough love, right? So before we get into it, when you and I say tough love, what comes to mind?
Depends on what type of tough love you're talking about, whether it be from a parent to a child, or a friend to a friend, or a spouse. It all kind of varies. When I think tough love, though, is just basically saying, hey, man, you're not being wise.
Now, question.
Yeah.
Do you think that could ever be taken in a like very harmful way,
Oh,
like a different, like
absolutely.
harmful approach.
Absolutely. Thinking about the way we grew up. Now, mind you, my dad never touched me. Like I
Never hit you, anything like yeah.
no, and we were before it was cool or trend in it, like before it was a norm to accept people. We were taught to accept people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, your dad's in family counseling, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like in the 80s we grew up, and I mean, if you live differently than us, we, no matter what, it's just we loved you no matter what. It's
Yeah.
like that was always accepting. But I do remember seeing parents and stuff, like, or not parents, but like friends, how they would get spanked a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Or they would get yelled at, stuff like that. And so I personally never received any of that tough love.
Sure.
But I was told several times, I'm like, hey, don't talk to your mom that way. Hey, show some respect. Things like
Yeah.
that. Just where they steered you in the right way, without any like harming you.
Sure. Well, see, and that's the take I wanted to actually talk about, is because I've said this a lot before, that regardless of what your opinion or your take is on a certain subject, you can find an article or a video or even like peer-reviewed studies on anything to back up your opinion.
Oh yeah.
Like on both sides of any ball. You know what I mean? So this one comes from Psychology Today, and it's called "The Real Problem with Tough Love: Recognizing Verbal Abuse is Hard Enough Without It." So this whole article's take, and I'm not saying this is necessarily 100% my opinion. This whole article's take is basically how tough love is bad, and I'm not saying it's not, because there is a lot of interlaced abuse in tough love, and basically like the history of it and kind of where it came from. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that necessarily all tough love is abuse, because it also depends on how you define tough love, right? Kind of like what you were just saying of like being able to sit someone down and tell them that they're doing something wrong because you love them might be considered tough love.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, some other people might consider tough love smacking the crap out of your kid and telling them to straighten up, right? So there's the whole like,
Well, isn't it back in, like, you hear Generation X, which I'm from? They talk about, my parents beat the crap out of me, therefore I'm more respectful to my elders and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the reason why. Like, I don't like why our kids necessarily are like that. I think it's because we as parents aren't parenting as good.
yeah,
I dead serious. Like, we're not saying, hey, don't say that. Hey, we're
sure.
like, there's ways you can discipline your children without hurting them.
We could end right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why would you physically hurt someone to prove something? It's like, let's just don't do that.
Yeah. Now, see, there'd be a little bit of a vulnerable moment for me. I started out my parenting, obviously not started out because they were babies, but when they started getting to like the toddler stage and things like that, like hand smacking, spanking, things like that. Not like pulling a belt or, hitting them with what some people do, but realizing that like that wasn't doing anything other than like making my kids scared of me. And a lot has changed, and 99.9% of that came from like my wife's like, there is no benefit to that, like, because she was raised in the same way. Like she was never hit, and she's a better person than I am. So I think that I'm sure people can sit there and argue for days of like, oh, it's it's beneficial in this way or that way or whatever. But I think associating correction with pain as a child is probably like, I'm sure I didn't do my homework enough. I'm sure there's massive studies of why that's super detrimental to them.
Well, I would remember, what was it, like a month ago? So Hattie's 10 years old, and she's my youngest. And I'm like, Hattie, you need to do this, or you're going to get beat. Like, I said
just
that.
like jokingly, yeah.
But I'm like, but you're going to get spanking. Like, I'm going to,
Yeah.
it's like, no, you're not that.
But see,
but she knows I was joking. But like, I've
Yeah.
never touched them. But they're respectful, they're loving, they're kind to people, and I think it's just the way you parent. Like, you can be kind to your children and still not be there. Like, your job is to be a parent, to raise them to be successful and productive in today's world.
sure.
Your job isn't, and so there's lots of ways you can do that as a parent, and also with your spouse. Like, there's ways where you don't talk to your spouse. unless she's kicking you in the middle of the night, like we talked about last episode.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, but I'm just joking. But it's just there's ways where you can communicate without being harmful to them,
Sure.
both verbally or physically.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because this article talks about how it says the idea of tough love legitimizing verbal abuse as a tool for changing people and children and their behaviors. It was hailed as a motivational tool for so long, but now it's starting to be. I mean, it's starting to be viewed more as kind of what it was, is that abuse, right? So, do you think that like the tough love side of things can be also viewed as verbal abuse to kids?
Oh, absolutely. And I also think siblings can be abusive to their other siblings.
Yeah.
And I am very aware of that. And I make sure that my kids are speaking kindly to each other. And
Yeah.
like, we're here to protect and love. We're not here to, this needs to be a safe place for everyone in our home.
Yeah.
And so I think siblings can be abusive to siblings, and also parents can be a sibling. And also, I think children can be abusive to their parents when it comes to
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and so I think it's just everyone's responsibility to take care of their own and teach. And so that's it's just you as a parent, as me as a parent, we have to teach them that and tell them when they're in the wrong. Like, because that's our job. Is like, hey, what you just said is not right. You should not say that. And then they receive some sort of discipline from it.
So have you ever heard the whole like, I'm tough on them because I love them?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Like, I heard that a few times. I mean, like we talked about this a couple episodes ago, of kind of like when you're, your football coach, your baseball coach or whatever, like they'll scream at you, whatever, like it's kind of their job. They're coaching, but they care about you. They care about the success of the team or whatever. That's different, because that's kind of the position that calls for like the authority that comes from like a coach or whatever. But when it comes to parenting, like, you ever heard the term of like the adult you are today is who you would have felt the safest with as a child? See, I think that there is some truth to that. But like I wasn't ever in danger with my parents, right?
Not at all.
But my parents were a product of their parents, and so on and so forth. And I think that you're starting to see the changes of like, I was spanked, but I was never like beat. I was never crossed any lines or whatever. And I don't know. I don't think I can ever say like, oh, I've got childhood trauma from that. But I will say there's times where like my son will wipe out on his bike, and I'll be like, get up, like you'll be okay. But then before I say that, sometimes it's starting to click with me of kind of like, you all right, buddy? Like, like just changing, like it can have the same concept of like teaching him to get up from the fall, teaching him that like, well, you didn't break anything. So let's, maybe like kind of reiterate or like kind of reassess, but it's not so much like, get up, you're fine, rub some dirt in it. It's more like, are you all right, bud? Like, yeah, are you bleeding a little bit? Okay, do you need a Band-Aid? Like, okay, are you done, or do you want to keep riding your bike? It's like finding like a way to like communicate, how are you feeling about what just happened? Not me telling you what you need to feel about what just happened.
Well, when Isaac was riding in the back of that truck, I still think it's the most dumb thing.
Yeah.
And he comes in and he's bleeding. He's all that. And I'm like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Do we need to go to the hospital? No. Are you dumb? I'm like, what were you thinking?
Oh, I think there's 100%. That's what I'm saying is this article is all, like, oh, verbal abuse, oh, it's physical abuse, things like that. But I do feel like as a father, there is a time and a place for me to like appropriately correct my children through a little bit of emotional toughness, of kind of like, there's been 100 times probably in the last week of like, stop it. You do not talk to your mother that way.
No.
Period. Like, and it's not so much I'm like shutting them up about their own feelings. It's trying to be like, okay, you're going a little bit too high with this. So it's not like I can get louder, I can get higher. It's like, no, I'm going to kind of put an abrupt stop to this attitude. If you need to take a walk, you need to kind of like, same thing we told my daughter, if you need to go in your bedroom and punch your beanbag and get these feelings out so we can come back and then talk to mom and me appropriately, like that's the difference versus.
I have a really good thing today.
Sure.
We're driving up here. We had to drop off. I was like an hour early here.
Yeah.
Because I had to drop Porter off at 7. And so at work. And so he was running late. No, not he wasn't running. Candace and Isaac were running late. I'm in the car with Porter, and we're just waiting for them to get here. He's frustrated. He's angry. He's like, I'm going to be
Porter
late.
is?
He's like, he gets a lot of anxiety. And it worries me. And so I'm sitting here saying, okay, you feel this way. I'm like, you need to learn to be grateful. Like, hey, you're going to be on time. You might not be able to take a little extra time to use a restroom or anything like that. It's just like when you get there, you have to go right to work. And I'm like, but we got you. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
And then Candace in the back goes, I understand how you're feeling. I'd be frustrated too.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm just like,
moms are so good.
yeah, no. And I'm like,
You're like,
yeah, I would be frustrated if I was him too. I get that.
yeah, like telling kids that. I love that you said that, because like that's a lot of stuff that kind of like branched from this article. The other things that I was looking up was just that's probably to me what the more verbal abuse side of tough love is telling your kids that what they're feeling is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then telling them how they should feel, because then that just instills like self-doubt from like a really early age. And we know this through like scientific studies. Your brain freaking is developing clear into your late 20s. So while they're babies, while they're toddlers, while they're little kids, while they're adolescents, young adults, teenagers, all that crap, like what we say to them as parents, I'm realizing more and more has so much effect, because I'm realizing that I'm repeating things to my kids that like I didn't like hearing as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like not necessarily that it's like, oh, my parents were bad parents. It's like, no, it's because their parents were that way but worse, and then their parents were that way but worse. And I think it's slowly trickling into more of a like kind of what Candace just said, like, I understand how you're feeling.
I would be
And then dude, the like the emotional connection that just like freaking wired in Porter's brain right there, like the neurons and everything like that stuff, is just like
where I'm trying to teach him a lesson. I'm like, dude, you're gonna have a miserable life if you're always looking at the negative. And Candace's like, dude, you're not Tyson. He's not like that all the time. It's like he's frustrated at the moment. I get why he's frustrated.
And see, that's why I feel like this is probably a good topic for dads to hear, because dads are fixers. Men, a lot of times, stereotypically, we're fixers. Like sometimes I'll be like, this isn't, and Chelsea will be like, I'm not asking you to fix this. And I'm kind of like,
have you seen the nail in the head? The video of the nail in the head? Where the lady, like, you don't see the nail in the head. She literally has a nail like hammered into her head. It's just sticking out about 2 inches. And her husband and her talking, so you can't see her head. You can just see like her lips moving and her husband listening. She's like, I have a headache all the time. And all my sweaters, they're snagged all the time. Like I don't understand. And the husband's just like staring right at the nail. And he's just like,
kind of like, I can solve the problem now.
And he's
for
like,
you.
that's gotta be really hard. and then she goes, thank you for just hearing me. And then he goes, but if you just took the nail out, I don't need to be fixed. And I'm just like, what are you doing? You really never seen that?
No. We're gonna have to cut that part out. I'm just kidding. No, that's funny. I mean, yeah, obviously, like, I love the comedic approach to things like that. I think that's hilarious, right? But that's the reason that's funny is because it's relatable, because it's like, while it may not literally be a nail in the head, because that's how guys see problems. We literally see hammer nail. Like that's how we see it, right? We see like broken, fix it. Yeah, we don't fix our own problems. Like we can't see our own problems at all.
No, that's kind of what we talked about last time. Is fighting a good fight and looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
And actually seeing, what do I need?
But I'm glad you shared that example between you and your wife and Porter, because like as a man, you're kind of like, okay, listen, buddy, let me teach you this life lesson. You might as well be sitting in a boat fishing, right, and talking about life lessons. But meanwhile, Candace and all of her motherly intuition is like, no, I get how he's feeling. Like she like right then and there validated the crap out of him, and that probably
put him in a positive mood.
Taught him way more than what as a dad. Not that I'm bashing you, because I'd have done the same exact thing.
No, because I think what I was saying is right and correct and in a kind way. Like, you're not going to be happy if you're always looking at the negative.
So that's what I'm saying, is that you didn't say the wrong thing.
Just the wrong time.
It's like the and then that's where you start going down the snowball of kind of like, oh, kids these days are soft. Like no. Kids these days are a lot tougher, because kids these days are like fighting back against like the status quo, and like they're fighting back about like social injustices. They're fighting back about a lot of different stuff. So I think it kind of behooves us as parents to set them up that much more of kind of like from an early age, helping them understand their own feelings. So by the time they get to adulthood, they're not doing what all of us are doing of kind of having to talk about our feelings now.
Let me be a little bit vulnerable.
Okay.
And that's serious.
We've never done this on the show before.
Lydia, I was a different parent to Isaac and Lydia than I am to my other
Your two
kids.
oldest.
And not that I was a bad parent, but I had depression, I had anxiety, I had a lot of issues that were not taken care of and stuff like that. And I was a different parent. And Lydia would always say, Dad, you need to go to therapy. Dad, you need to do this. Dad, you need to do this. And I took it as a bashing on me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a bad person. Like, she doesn't love me, all this kind of stuff. And when I finally humbled myself to listen to what she was saying and took on what she wanted me to do, that's when I became a better person. And the kids are fighting back, but in a positive way, because they love us. Yeah. They love us. And they want us to be happy too. And they can see. The kids aren't stupid.
No.
And so I'm grateful for Lydia telling me how the things that I need, even though they might not have been in the nicest way. Because she fought it. She fought.
Dude, my oldest, she's very sharp. She's
and her and Lydia love each other.
Dude, my daughter, Olivia, we call her Liv. She's you know this, but she's 8. And your daughter Lydia, she's what? 17. When we did the beard shave off video, I obviously know this, I'm just kind of sharing it for everybody. My daughter was like sucked next to Lydia the whole time. She was just stuck right next to her. And I have to tell you this, I don't know if I told you this. So she's over playing with friends, I think last week or whatever. She was talking about Lydia. And she was like, she's like, yeah, you guys, she's so cool. Whatever. She's a teenager. She was talking like she was the coolest. And I'm like, dang, it's too bad we don't live so close, because I would literally just dump her off with them all day long.
No, like, Lydia's like, I want to babysit.
But it's funny you say that. But so my daughter, she's super intelligent, like already reading way past what an 8-year-old is reading. And the other day I had a moment where I was on I had a really bad day, really rough day at work. And stereotypical, brought it home, should not have brought it home, was on a little bit of a rampage, was too short and rude and impatient with my wife.
I was too short.
Yeah, I've always been too short, 5'10". But no, I was
bad joke.
No, it's good.
The wrong time.
But no, it was too impatient, too short fused, and was rude to my wife, unintentionally, not her fault. I just was short and frustrated about something, and the way I responded to my daughter was really rude or whatever, and it made her cry, and I didn't see it until this is where I'm like, the generation that is coming up is going to like change the world, because she came to me 5 minutes later, because she went up to her room, grabbed her journal, wrote out how she felt about what I had just said and did. I wasn't insulting to her. I just was like short, almost kind of like, I can't right now, whatever. And it was kind of rude, and explained what I said and how it made her feel. And then like gave it to me. As a 34-year-old man, if your 8-year-old daughter gives you a journal entry about what you just did and how it made her feel, like, argue that what you did was correct, and like you're gonna be wrong every single time. That brought me down and humbled me really fast. Did I instantly like, oh sweetie, I'm so sorry? Like, no, I had to process for a couple minutes, and I had to like be silent because I was embarrassed. Because
it's because you have to humble.
But my 8-year-old daughter humbled me because my attitude was not correct in that moment, because I brought something home that had no business.
Can I say one thing though?
Yeah.
You're obviously doing it right if your daughter feels comfortable enough for you to come talk to her.
And thank you. I think a lot of that comes from Chelsea, of like the example she set for our home.
And you too.
But I've learned a lot from that from Chelsea.
It's just like what I learned today. No, yeah. But go back to your story. It's just like, I'm like, you're obviously doing something right if she can feel comfortable enough to tell you how she feels.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Well, no, because I like to think that I've said this 100 times over. I want my kids to be able to come talk to me.
100%.
But I also want my kids to feel like, like I have my position as their father to also be, a teacher and somebody who can correct them and stuff like that. And so, but it was a new dynamic, because I was like, my daughter just taught me something. And it was, I think she showed it to my wife first, and my wife was kind of like, I'm going to show this to Dad. So it's just leading by example. And that was a moment of tough love from my daughter. And I think that is an appropriate level of tough love, and that can go in multiple different ways. And some people will be like, oh, it's disrespectful, your daughter's telling you what to, like, no, I think parenting in such a way that your kids don't feel like they have a voice at all is just so unhealthy.
Yeah.
Or like because I said so, or like because I said no. Like I think and this is 100% again credit back to Chelsea. She has shown me the benefits of, she's like shared articles and different Instagram reels and TikToks and videos about this type of parenting, and then kind of backed it up with her own way of like, we need to allow our kids to question things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean that they're above reproach or that we can't correct them? Like, no. But I think the time is ending where it's just be like, because I said no. I think that kids deserve to know, like, to an extent, depending on how old they are or whatever, they deserve to know, like, why. Because, I mean, how come? Because I said so. Why? Because you're not really supposed to. Why?
Well,
like,
I have with Porter when he was 15. He's 16 now. He asked why.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I'm like,
I drive you nuts.
No. I looked at him and I was honest. Do you want me to tell you why? Really?
Yeah.
Like I was like, because you know why. And I meant it's like because it wasn't anger, but it was out of frustration because I know you know why.
Yeah.
But you're trying to make it so that I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And I'm like, you know why? So do you want me to tell you why in front of all these people? Because I will.
Ooh.
Or do you just want to put it up? And because we have some rules with electronics, and and it's just stuff like that. And so I'm just like, it is what it is. And sometimes they like to argue with me. I'm like, we can argue, but
or we can keep this. Yeah.
No. I'm like, we will talk till the ends of time with it's just me and you. But if you want to do this in front of everyone, I can.
And see, that's.
But see, they try. That's why they try to manipulate you sometimes.
And that's where I want to clarify. I'm glad you said that because it's like this. I'm not over here being this like super new age soft parent where it's like everything my little angel has to say is like.
But her feelings are valid.
Her feelings are valid. Does that mean that her and my son sometimes are going to say things of like,
they're 6 and 8?
Like, no, like we don't say that. Which I have to tell you the story. Yesterday, my kids are fighting. I can't remember. I was like at the store or something, picking something up or whatever. And I'm coming home and my wife calls me just almost laughing. And she's like, the kids are fighting. They're being crazy or whatever. And then she pulls Elliot aside to talk to him or whatever. And he's like, Mom, we call Olivia Livy. Mm-hmm. Mom, I called Livy the B word. Like, what? She's like, what's the B word, buddy? Called her a brat. But see, this is what I'm saying is that like they're obviously still super innocent little kids, and not every thought they're gonna have or every feeling they're gonna have is gonna be super in depth and super like emotionally sound and mature. Like they're still learning, but taking those moments and building on them is what's important. So like the way my wife takes that and being like, oh yeah, buddy, like not making him feel like that's a bad word, but it's not nice to maybe call her that. But at the same time, he hears me call her a brat at times because she can be a brat. Mm-hmm. So because she's 8. And so I think there's no one perfect answer.
No, because parents we're learning.
Yeah.
Our emotions are learning, like we're learning still because every age is a new learning experience with that child. Because like Isaac is a lot different than Porter, which is a lot different than Emmett. And all of them have to be disciplined and talked with differently.
Yeah.
And it's just how it works. One is very, very sensitive.
Yeah.
One is very, very loving. And one could freaking care less.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so it's just kind of like, okay, how do we go about communicating with you? And all 6 of them will manipulate you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Kids.
You know what I mean?
Kids are really good at manipulating.
And so it's just like you're there for them. You understand them. You love them, but they're still going to do dumb things, and you just got to learn how to be able to communicate the best way that they can.
Do you know what's one thing that I've had to learn a lot? And I don't do this, and I don't do this in a way to like make my wife the bad guy, but I can see how it accidentally does. Well, no, we can't do that. Mom said no. Like, she's like, what? Why is it? Because I said no. Why isn't it? Because we said no. And I'm like, that's a good point, right? Like, so I'm definitely the dad that just. I'm such a sucker for my kids when we go somewhere. I'm always the treat dad.
Oh, I get that.
I'm the like, oh, let's get this. And like sometimes it's not a good idea.
We'll get the good cereal.
Because it's like, there's the whole joke of like, don't tell mom. Well, that's not a good thing sometimes, right? So there's like it's gotten to the point where times where my wife's like they don't need a treat when I take them to the because I like to take whenever I go grocery shopping I like to take like one or both of them with me because I like to spend that time with them. Costco, that's like our go-to. I take me and the kids. Mom gets some time by herself. We get hot dogs. We get the big cookie. Whatever. But like if I take them with me to Walmart, have you seen those little Kinder Surprise eggs where one half's a toy and one half's like a Nutella treat, right? Like it's gotten to the point where it's kind of like, Dad, can we get an egg? Like, no, Mom said we can't. I'm not realizing in that moment that that's making my wife seem like we can't do anything fun because Mom says we can't, but Dad wants to get us this, right? So it's just kind of rewiring that. Like sometimes it's just no because the answer is no because you haven't had dinner yet, or that's just maybe too much sugar right now or whatever, or that adds up because this economy sucks, and a $2.50 every single time over the course of whatever. When we're budgeting for groceries and things like that, like there's a lot of reasons why, and at the same time you also don't want to just instill in your kids every time we go to the store you get a treat, because sometimes kids are kind of like dogs, right? Like my dogs know every time we go outside and you go potty, they come back in, they run straight to the pantry because they know they're getting a treat. Same thing so while I think it's fun to do those things with your kids and like have like whenever we would go take a loaded garbage to the dump when I was a kid, my dad would we'd stop at the Circle K gas station. We get a donut and chocolate milk, and it was just like a fun family memory. So I have those with my kids, but I also need to turn it into a way of like every time if there's something that I want to do that might be seen as fun, to not turn on to say, well, Mom said we can't, because then that makes it seem like my wife's the authoritarian or like the not fun one. When in reality, anytime we go do anything fun as a family, Mom planned it. We went to the aquatic center. We went to the, we went to the dinosaur museum, or we went to see the new Inside Out movie or whatever. It's 100% my wife. But just because Dad buys some candy every now and then, like
he's a fun one.
Yeah, but then at the same time, dads sometimes are a little bit like kids because, the little claw game with stuffed animals. Walmart has those, and I'm an impulse buyer. I know you are too. 100% an impulse buyer. You showed up with donuts today
because I was an hour early. And I thought everyone would enjoy donuts.
Sure, that was kind. But my daughter's like, "Can we play that?" I'm like, "No, honey. Like it's just a waste of money." Next thing you know, we're playing it. But the problem is I won, and then we brought home this toy, and then I go home and telling my wife about it. She's like, "How much money did you spend?" I was like, "Oh, it was only a couple bucks or whatever." But now my son's the next time we go to Walmart, he's like, "Dad, can we do it?" I'm like, "Oh no, buddy, we shouldn't." And now we're doing it. I won 2, so now it's like, well, crap. Now we got 2. He gets 2. Now she's gonna want a second one. I'm like, okay, this is where it starts rolling into like giving into your kids too much, and then the tough love. But this is where my kid taught me a lesson. This is Elliot. He's 6. We just won the claw game. He's got 2. One is a yellow Power Ranger. The other one is a zebra, but it's rainbow colors. The zebra is not his taste, right? But he's also at the same time he's like, I don't want to give it to Livy because then she's gonna have 2. So we're going around, and then out of nowhere, in line at the pharmacy, there's a little girl who was sick, and he's like, Dad, can I give it to her? He's like, she looks like she doesn't feel good. I'm like, absolutely, buddy. So it was just like a fun little moment that we took something that I was dreading was going to be a fight at home, and my son taught me that like, well, you're being raised by a good mom, and I'd like to think that I'm a good dad. That he realized that like, oh, I could do something nice for this little girl who looks sick, and she was staring at the unicorn like nonstop in the cart. So I think that there's a whole dynamic when it comes to like raising kids of like, there is a level of like, no, we can't, or no, we shouldn't, or like, here's the reasons why. And then there's times where it's kind of like, just lay off them. They're kids. They're going to cry.
Pick your battles is what me and Candace
cry.
always say. Just pick your battles.
Yeah.
Because just like in football, offensive line, defensive line, there's always holding every play. You can call holding every time, or just pick your battles.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. You just got to pick your battles and know that, hey, this isn't that big of a deal.
You can be like LeBron James and you could travel every single play and never get called.
Sure.
But no, so you've heard that whole like, oh, boys don't cry.
Yeah.
Or did you ever like have? I mean, obviously you grew up in a really healthy, household growing up. Did you ever have like friends or brothers or anyone else ever tell you that as a kid?
Mm-mm.
Did you cry as a kid? You don't cry much now as an adult.
Not very much.
No?
No, like even when I broke my arm and stuff, like when I broke my arm, like every year I played football. Um, no, I just didn't cry.
You didn't cry when you broke your arm as a
Mm-mm.
kid? Dude, I cried if I stubbed my toe.
No, what's funny is the same guy. One of the guys about 5 plays later broke his arm the same way, and he was out. He was crying and everything. And just I was like, no, I don't know. I learned early on that crying doesn't help me. It makes it worse
Really?
for me. Like if I have a headache, like when I was a kid, I remember crying just made it hurt worse, and just crying never helped me.
But do you feel like the same way as an adult now?
It's
Now that
just,
I've evoked emotional responses in you on this show.
I don't know. It's just never. I'm not afraid to cry. It's just
It-
like I cried when I saw Isaac.
yeah. Yeah.
Like not like
So you don't have a negative outlook on crying that crying is weak.
no, not at all.
Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to get at. Is
I
that
just don't. I just
it does. Yeah, you're not an emotional guy when it comes to that.
yeah.
Like,
I
like
don't know why. It's just
versus I don't know if it's a genetic thing,
mm-hmm.
but if obviously you guys can tell, sometimes an emotional response for me, whether it's happy or sad or just remembering a traumatic time or whatever, it emotes with like high emotions and tears do come out. But being raised in the 90s and early 2000s and stuff like that, we hear it all the time of kind of like, oh, boys don't cry, right? Or like crying is weak or crying is a sign of weakness or whatever. But like we've also heard the whole term of like, oh, I went home and had a good cry, right? Obviously, that's.
I don't know if I would ever say that.
I've never have. I'm saying that like.
Whatever. I called you the other day.
Can you not like
I'm
not
having a good
not
cry.
not everything has to be on this show. Like, no, but that's what I was saying is like there's definitely been moments where there's been probably a handful of times where I can say that I can honestly say that I like was sobbing, like uncontrollable sobbing, right? One a handful of them were all in the emotionally unstable, like mental illness stage where I felt like I was done being on this earth, right? And then another time was just around my daughter being born.
Mm-hmm.
First time I kind of took a moment to myself, and it was all like happy tears and stuff, right? But I think that it's starting to shift that showing emotion is like a positive thing versus it used to be in the 90s and stuff. Like if your friends started crying, it was like because they were hurt. Like you never saw your friend like if they cried because they were like embarrassed or whatever, they would just like go home.
Yeah.
Or like they would be embarrassed to go home, or like you'd have their dad like you ever like over at your friend's house at dinner as a kid and their dad would get angry or whatever. It just was like awkward because like nobody knew how to like emotionally respond.
Mm-hmm.
And we all knew that guy growing up that had like
My kids,
dad
every
that was-
one of them, I was thinking, I'm like, I think I've seen all of them cry this week alone.
Yeah. Oh, dude, my kids cry all the time.
Like, but mine's 20 all the way down to 10. But it's not like I have zero problem or anything like that. It's just for me personally, I've never been able to. There's like I said, there's sometimes I will. It's just
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to. It's just
Dude, there's a lot.
sometimes I wish I could. Like I feel like being vulnerable and I say, hey, let's be vulnerable now. I wish I could show you that this really is me being vulnerable by showing a little bit more, but
Now, on the flip side, we've been talking about parenting. We've been talking about, spouses, things like that. Now, what about from like a professional stance? Like tough love from a professional stance, right? Or like not crossing that line with an employee or a coworker or a boss or whatever. Like, what do you, because obviously you own Copper John's Beard Care,
mm-hmm.
or excuse me, just Copper John's General, and then the barbershop. And you've had plenty of moments where there have been emotional response times.
Oh yeah.
So how have you navigated that?
I've learned. I would say there's several times where I'm like, ooh, like I let them take advantage of me. I let them do this. I like, ooh, and now to the point where I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like this is what needs to happen. This is what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a fun conversation to have, but it has to happen.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, you'll be gone. And sometimes they're like, well, if this affects my pay, I don't even want to be here. I'm like, I totally understand.
Yeah.
you can leave whenever you want. I'm not forcing you to stay here, but I don't say it that way. But no, I say it that way, but I don't say you're forcing me. You can leave whenever you want.
And see,
But it's just like you have. I was losing money for a year and a half, and I'm like, I can't keep. It's we close the doors, or we do something different.
yeah.
And so all these, you had a couple of barbers who were just like, I'm gone then. I'm like, okay.
Okay, there's the door.
Like, it's like I'm closing.
You can't have an emotional attachment to it. Yeah.
And it's sad because you want them to like you. You want them to enjoy what they're doing. But
Yeah.
in the end, it's just like they're in it for themselves. And I learned it that way.
Interesting. Well, because I had a moment this week where I think I realized that I have been, I don't know if too soft is the term, but I don't manage the entire company, but I do manage a couple of guys, and I manage mainly machines and trucks and stuff, but then I do manage a couple of the truck drivers, right? And I'm not going to get into all the detail just for privacy, and I'm not going to slam the guy in his private life or whatever, but I had an instant this week. My brother's been out of town all week for just the holiday and on vacation, so a lot of it fell on me, right? Second in command type situation. But this is one of my, the guys who directly reports to me. And there's been instances over the last 9 months or so where it was, oh, sorry, this happened. Oh, sorry, this happened. And we all have, oh, sorry, this happened moments. We all have emergency situations where we can't show up to work, or we all have emergency situations where we got to call out. And I wholeheartedly believe in like a work-life balance. Like, I think the time needs to leave where it's like, first comes work, then my family. Like, no. You go to work to provide for your family or for yourself or whatever. And I'm sure that could be a whole nother episode we probably should do. But the problem is there was a pattern starting that every so often, no show, no call, no show, or like show up late, or show up when they want, leave when they want. And I realized in this moment the other day, all of those decisions where I didn't come down a little bit harder when I should have led up to him just doing what he wanted when he wanted, and didn't think there was ever going to be any repercussion. And it was a situation where he just didn't show up the day before, and finally got a hold of him, and it was like, oh, this situation, it seemed like a legitimate emergency situation. I was like, okay, these things happen, but you got to communicate with me. And that was basically the whole gist of the conversation. Like, you've got to tell me this. And this is not anything new. We've communicated that time and time again. And then I'm like, okay, well, we have this happening tomorrow. Can I count on you? Because if you don't show up and do this, the rest of the job site can't move forward because he's a truck driver. He needed to transport in a very specific piece of equipment that we could continue on with this side of the job. He's the only one that does it because my other truck driver was busy doing something else. And my brother was out of town, so I couldn't be the one to move it because I had to go to Evanston, Wyoming to look at another job situation. And day comes, I told him be here at this time. He wasn't there. Hour rolls by, still not there. Phone's off. Can't get a hold of him. Whatever. Finally get a hold of him. It's like 8:30 in the morning. He was supposed to be like at the truck by like 6:30 or 7. And I'm like, where are you? At this point, like I don't think I've ever talked to him this way. Like, I'm mad. Like, I'm pissed. I got a lot on my plate. And I'm just, there's plenty of instances where I should have handled it differently because now I'm angry. And now I'm not. I'm the complete opposite of every other time I've handled a situation with him. I'm being more understanding and giving him a little bit too much leeway. Now I'm kind of like, if you were me in this situation, what would you do? What would you do? I flat out asked him that. And he wasn't answering. And I said, if you were me in this situation, how would you handle it? And I'm getting angrier because he's not answering. And he finally is like, well, suspension. I'm like, no, dude, we're way past suspension. But then I'm realizing in that moment, like, I never really gave him any warnings. I never docked his pay. I never did any of these things and showed him that, like, this behavior that you're exhibiting every 3 weeks where you just become unreliable for about a week is not okay. So I kind of instilled in him that, like, there really isn't any consequence. So that was a learning experience for me. But at the very same time, he's a full-on adult. He's a grown man. He's the same age group as me. He's got a significant other and there's kids involved. Like, I should not have to tell you that showing up to work and communicating is appropriate. So, like, there's a level of which when it comes to professionalism, like tough love is like, dude, I respect you. I appreciate you and everything that you do for this company. But if you're going to...
That's why we call it kind candor.
Yeah, kind candor. Like, if you're going to hold things up after I literally gave you a pass yesterday and then you don't show up And this is the thing is like, Kate, can you just get to the truck? We need to get this moved. Yeah, I'll be there. Dude literally never showed up.
Oh, wow.
That's willful termination at that point.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, I'm really sad. I'm now looking for his replacement. And I hope he doesn't listen to the show because I'm not trying to talk crap about him, but it's like, it's the point of like, I couldn't rely on him. And that was like the scope of his job. And now we have to look for a replacement. And it's frustrating because it's like, oh no, this is going to take so long. And we built up this and he knows the truck. And I'm sure there's a million punch list items that he has that he's not happy about. But unfortunately, if you have this type of a situation happening where you're not holding up your end of the bargain adequately, all this other stuff that you might want to bring up doesn't make a difference, because like I can't count on you, so why should you be able to tell me all the things where you can't count on me? So I think how that attributes to tough love is that like I think so much farther down the line, I should have been a little bit tougher when it first became a pattern of kind of like, just so you know, if this happens again, I'm gonna have to dock your pay, or I'm gonna have to dock your hours, or whatever. But because I was wanting to be like, no, dude, I get it. I understand things happen. And I run the truck schedule. I can move things around. So I'm like, it's really not that big a deal because I can get another truck. I can do this or whatever. So I kind of shot myself in the foot with that. But at the same time, you get what I'm saying though.
Oh, yeah.
Like I learned the lesson you were
that.
talking about.
I did that one with one barber and I won't do that again.
But that's what I'm saying is now I've like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that again because of the other side of it is my other truck driver. I don't even think about that guy during the day because he's the most reliable person I've ever met. And I've managed a lot of truck drivers over the years. And so to me, it's made me realize that not every situation is the same. And then how that bleeds over into parenting is not every kid is the same. Where my daughter is good here, my son may not be good there. But while my son is good here, my daughter may not do good there.
100%.
So I'm realizing that like this tough love is either, no, that's the way you do it, or no, that's abuse. I don't think either one of those is correct. I think that it's all situational and it's all dependent on like finding the healthiest route to help someone, whether that's a coworker or a friend or a sibling or, a child or a spouse, learn, how to appropriately act at a situation. Rant over.
No. No, I thought that was really well said. I don't really have anything to add.
So, well, I guess one of the last questions I have for you on here is like, do you have any instances where you felt like somebody was showing you tough love and you were like not ready to accept it?
Oh, Candace. Every day.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. No, but Candace, there's times like during the show where I would say something and I thought it was really, really good. Dead serious. I'm like,
oh yeah,
that was good. Like, Tyson, good job.
Nope.
And she's like, no, you shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it took me off guard. Yeah. And then I was a little irritated with it. Give me 10 minutes, walk around, and then I come back. I'm like, okay, see what you're saying.
Oof. Yeah.
But it sucks at first.
Oh yeah.
But she doesn't do that very often now. At the very beginning,
Yeah.
I'm like when we were just learning what to communicate and how to communicate it. Every now and then, still very, very, very rarely though. But I gotta say the hardest thing ever was Lydia and talking to me about what I need. Go to therapy and all this kind of stuff and what she saw in me. And it was hard, but now her and I are like best friends.
Yeah, she's a good kid, man.
Yeah, and I have such an enjoyable time with her, and so but it does require humility and it does require time. And like you said, sometimes it's kids don't know what they don't know, and sometimes it's they might feel something, but it's inaccurate. But sometimes it's legit.
Yeah, I like that, and I'd say that I have to 100% agree with you that there's. I mean, I called you the other day. I was like, when I kind of same situation. I was just kind of on that bad mood rant. Came home bad, and then it was you're like, you okay, man? And we talked a little later. And I was like, yeah, I came upset and I said some stuff I regret, and I kind of put in my place. And here's one thing, I will apologize, and I will pat myself on the back for that one. If and when I see that I messed up, I will apologize, because I don't think it lessens the amount of time. I don't think it lessens an apology if you learn to apologize quickly. I think you need to learn how to apologize correctly, not just like, hey, I'm sorry I said that. Like, I try my hardest to be like I'm sorry that I said it like this because I realize it made you feel like that. That is something I've had to learn a lot of. Like, I realize how me doing this triggers this in you and makes you kind of remember these situations.
What if they don't apologize to you and they did you wrong? How does that bother you? I'm not talking about like your wife. I'm talking about just people.
I think that.
But sometimes it bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, I have probably a handful of moments right here that I probably will never put on the show of times that I didn't get an apology I thought that I needed. And I'm sure if I went to therapy, I probably need to work through them more than I admit. But I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you because I guess the thoughts that you just brought to my head of the times that I never got an apology I needed. Yeah, I guess they're probably still unprocessed. Maybe I just kind of tucked them in the back corner of my mind.
Yeah.
Because
that's one thing. Those used to control me.
Getting apologies?
Like not getting it when I felt like I deserved it. And it used to really, really bother me. Now it doesn't.
But see, I guess more so now that I'm thinking about it. What do I stand to gain from that apology? Other than maybe I know who you are now. You know? And so, and the last thing I kind of wanted to bring up, because I kind of lost my train of thought. We're talking about Candace giving you stuff that you're ready to hear. Oh, I remembered. See, welcome to ADHD, right? you gotta go backwards to find where you're at. So my kind of like challenge that I want to end this episode with is that we recognize that there's a lot of people out there that grew up in a very unhealthy home. Now, there's a lot of guys and women out there that grew up in very tumultuous, abusive.
Good word.
Good word, right?
Good word.
I know. It just came to me, and I was like, I'm hoping I'm going to say this one right. We know that there's a lot of people that grew up in the very abusive and very hard homes, right? It is, and take this with a huge grain of salt. It is now your responsibility to make sure that is not repeated. So I would say my challenge in this whole thing is that obviously we know that people grow up differently. People grew up. There's someone near and dear to my heart that I'm not going to share. It's their story that grew up in a situation that no child ever deserves to grow up in. Not only emotional and verbal abuse, but physical abuse. And and this is only speaking from experience because I saw this from this person. It is our responsibility as parents and as friends, siblings, spouses, partners to change that, to make that different, to end and break that cycle, and to find an appropriate definition of tough love. But then also, partner that with, like a softer side of love and like an emotional response to love. So I am a product of parents who tried really hard. So I take the good things that they did and I'm trying to improve on them. And I take the amazing things that I've learned from my wife and I try to couple all that together, as well as finding ways to improve on myself and try to just raise my children up to be better versions of myself. And a lot of those examples I've also learned from you. So my challenge is, if you see something in your past that you're not okay with, try to do the opposite of that going forward, not only for yourself or for your children. So that's kind of all I had for today. It was kind of a little bit of a deeper, funnier topic, and we're going to have some pretty good bloopers from that one. But is there anything you want to finish out with?
No, just look in the mirror. Just humility and hard work. Just kind of what we talked about. It's like, I think that's kind of the core. If we want to be better parents, we have to look first into ourselves.
Yeah.
And see how we can be better for our kids and for our wife.
Yeah.
Our spouses.
I love that, man. So thank you guys for listening. If you guys haven't noticed Tyson's shirt, we're going to have merch launching soon. Actually, by the time this episode ends,
it's done.
Merch is up. So check out dadbodsandbeards.com. You'll also find links to our social media as well as Patreon. Patreon is going to be a platform where you guys can come and connect with us on a personal and private level, where you guys can reach out, we can talk, and just connect. So thank you guys so much for listening to this. It means the world to us, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening, guys. It means the world to us. If you have a chance, please give us a 5-star review, as well as write something a little pretty in there so that we know that you know that we know that you care. Anyway, have a great day, guys. See, I can't do it.
Dude, that was good. I liked that. You can't redo it without laughing. That was good.